So I'm delighted to welcome a very special guest, Tony Brewerton from Loch Lomond Group. Tony is a valued customer of Brightworks, but he has a story to tell, and as everybody does. And I think what we have facing ourselves just now, as we go through the course of 2021 and hopefully the end of the pandemic, is that we are recruiting people into certain roles in the drinks industry, and particularly at those entry level roles. For the first time, we are finding it harder than we ever have done before. Now, I can put that down to a number of reasons, but be it Brexit, COVID, the furlough scheme, but for me, it's about the future that the whiskey industry can hold, the career opportunity it can give people. And I think Tony can tell a very, very good story about this because Tony's had a very successful career in the drinks industry. So, Tony, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks, Shan. Thanks, Shan. I'm just listening to you saying there that I've had a very successful career. I'm not so sure about that, not yet. Anyway, I've got a long way to go and a lot of things that I still need to learn, despite my 20 years in the industry. But I've certainly got a story to tell.
You do have a story to tell, and I would say you're successful, but you've got another few miles on your road to travel.
Indeed.
You've got whenever I've spoken to you in the past, and you've got a passion, you've got something inside you that just oozes that you enjoy what you do, and that you're passionate about the people that you work with and that work for you. And maybe just to start this about you, what drives you then in your career, and what's motivating you to do what you do?
Well, I think I'll take you back a number of years, Shan. The industry that I'm in, so the drinks industry, Loch Lomond Group, and I've previously worked for Diageo, the industry big player. I wanted to be in this industry, so I chose this industry 20 years ago as being where I wanted to be. And prior to that, I'd had 8 years working in the leisure industry. So graduated from university in Edinburgh, then went and worked for the Rank organisation, so managing pubs, clubs, ended up in bingo clubs. So it was a very kind of nomadic existence. And after a number of years, I had kind of decided that, as I was approaching my late 20s and into my 30s, that something really had to change. I couldn't continue with the lifestyle I had. I was putting on weight, I wasn't happy. And I decided to throw it all up in the air and decide to make a big change in my career. And following a bit of research and some really clear priorities. A, I wanted to live in Scotland. B, I wanted to work in Scotland. And C, I wanted a job in an industry where I feel that I could add value, I could use the skills that I'd accumulated over a period of time, but really importantly, would be quite secure. And when you begin to look across industry in Scotland, we've had issues with manufacturing, we've had issues with steel, we've got issues in hospitality, etc., etc. The one industry that I kept looking at was the drinks industry, and in particular Scotch. So back in 2000, I left my previous employer, went back to university, closed a couple of learning gaps, and purposefully targeted to go and work for Diageo. And it was, within Diageo that I could see the biggest opportunity to not only learn, but to grow, develop my leadership style, and work with the best in the industry. And thankfully, that panned out. And in 2002, I joined Diageo. And over the course of the 15 years that I worked with Diageo, moved around many, many different locations. Very fortunately, I have to say, there's a few things that make a career. One is hard work and one is a bit of luck. Yeah. And I'm sure there's a few other ingredients in the cake as well. But certainly those are two that I've relied on the most: hard work and luck. And I think hard work in a lot of instances generates luck for you. And I was lucky in my Diageo career that I got to see some corners of the world that I didn't expect to. I lived in Amsterdam for a while, but I accumulated this knowledge, and I guess thirst for more knowledge as my career progressed. And all my hopes of a career have really come through. I love the job that I'm in. I love the Scotch industry. I love manufacturing, and to a point they made earlier on, working with people is an absolute highlight for me. I just feel as if I'm at home when I'm in a distillery or I'm in a packaging plant, and I can feel the noise, I can feel the atmosphere. I know just by listening when something's running well or something's not, or by the tensions that I feel as I come onto the site. And I feel very, very blessed to have been afforded the opportunity over the last 20 years to work in this industry. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Well, that's a story and a half. And making that career change halfway through your life, halfway through your working life, takes a lot of guts.
It paid off. It paid off.
Absolutely has paid off. Well done. I'd say so. There's a real story, and you've gone from the big player Diageo, you've moved to Loch Lomond. You've got a fair size operation beneath you, and you'll have met loads and loads of people, and you've been giving people loads of opportunities. People do, people. How about you, Tony? And if we're trying to look at the industry, the drinks industry in particular, and say, right, it's manufacturing. It's not. It's an environment where there's manual work. It has, it's a manual job. There's no getting away from it. What's the attraction, and what do you see as the attraction for somebody that's going to come in at that level? What's the possibilities?
Well, Shan, you touched on me leaving the big player Diageo to move to the Loch Lomond Group. So that's 5 years I've been with the Loch Lomond Group now, and the growth in our organisation in that 5 years has been nothing short of incredible. Going from a handful of international markets back in 2014 to now well over 100 markets internationally, with a Scotch and premium spirits drinks portfolio that is gaining traction and worldwide recognition as well, given some of the awards that our Glen Scotia brand just won at the World Whisky Awards. But to go from where we were to where we are now has required a huge amount of change, and that's not only by way of our process, but it's also been by way of our people. And we've had to go out and recruit to supplement the experience, to supplement the energy and commitment and loyalty of our existing employees to help us grow and help us manage that journey. And going from what was, to your commentary, manual, to being a lot more process automated. The higher skills that are required to run some of the machinery that we now have in our plant, or certainly in our packaging plant, has required upskilling of the people that we have, but also the buying in of that talent. And going from 2016 when I joined the business to where we are now, we have a great talent pool around about us, and that's only come because people have recognised that our industry is just so diverse in its requirements. And the key reason, I wasn't looking to leave Diageo, fabulous company that it is, but the key difference between what Loch Lomond offered me in my own development and growth as a leader was that all the functions sat under one reporting line. So rather than a centralised procurement function, a centralised planning function, a centralised customer service function, where in a company the size of Diageo, you can sometimes get frustrated by the conflict of objectives, and you just wanted to be able to make the right trade-offs at the right times, and that's what moving to Loch Lomond allowed me to do. So I've got this lovely supply chain that I can very quickly gather the right people in the right room at the right time. Although I don't know what a right room looks like, but the right people in a room at the right time to very quickly make decisions and smooth the turbulence that's in the supply chain. But when I talk about all of those functions, whether it's procurement, whether it's planning, whether it's spirit supply, whether it's distillation, maturation, and packaging itself, all of those things take such diverse skills. And we're now in a position where we've got chemical engineer graduates, we've got packaging graduates, we've got a number of areas that have come through either academia or through experience that have now come to join us, realised what we can offer, wasn't necessarily expecting that offering, but all of a sudden, we have a clutch of individuals who are incredibly talented, growing in their experience, and this will really serve them well for their future.
So I guess you've got a really, really varied team, right? Skill sets, graduates, really, 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 really diverse. And these people have come in, they've become part of this, you've talked about this massive growth for Loch Lomond Group, which is so exciting. I've seen it myself over the last few years about how rapidly this is happening. And to me, that's like, I'm maybe looking into this from an outside in, but your career can be accelerated as quickly as the growth as the company. So people can do particularly well because they're part of this success story at Loch Lomond Group. Are you any examples of anyone that's that you could just talk about a person that's just gone through this?
Yeah, probably a couple, and I'll mix the examples if that's okay. One of the things that we will always look to do, as any good employer would do, and that is, not to ignore the talent that already exists in the organisation. And we have a fantastically loyal employee base, across all of our sites, and we're really fortunate to have that. And one example, and there's a few where people have taken that risk and put their hand up to say, I want to do something different and I'm keen to learn, and they've progressed other things. But the best example I can give you is when I joined the business, we had a review of the various levels and the structures as you would expect in a changing organisation. And we took a supervisor, and I'll not name him for fear of embarrassing him, but anyone who watches this will know exactly who I'm talking about. He was a supervisor in my warehouse, in my dispatch warehouse, and there was just something different about this guy. He was just so keen to learn. He was so motivated. He was so committed, and he was really courageous. He had that backbone that, if something wasn't right, he would call it out as not being right, but he would do it with skill. He would do it in a way that I've not seen in many individuals before. And he moved into a kind of team leader position. Your role, team leader in dispatch. Within 18 months, he was a team leader on a production line. 18 months later, he became my logistics manager. Right. And throughout all of this insatiable want to learn and grow and be a better leader, and refine his skills and define what great looks like. It was a delight to watch Shan. He's now just moved into the operations manager position in the packaging plant. So one of the biggest operational roles in the Loch Lomond Group, from being a dispatch supervisor driving a forklift truck 5 years ago, and that's absolutely not disparaging to forklift truck drivers. So he's a great success story of where someone who has come in at an entry level role and has unfortunately gone a good few years without having that opportunity, that forum, that vehicle to express aspiration. And when he was given the chance, he's absolutely grasped it with both hands, and is now in a fantastic position and doing fantastically well.
Absolutely brilliant story in a very short space of time, because that is, I've worked in
Yeah,
recruitment for a long, long time, Tony, and I've watched people's careers. I've been, I'd like to say I've been part of their careers growing. To see to go from that level to now running that operation, that's phenomenal, and that's off to him or her, because that's a brilliant,
yeah.
brilliant, brilliant.
And I'm kind of watching my back now, Shan, because his next steps into my job, I think. So I'm just going to have to begin to stifle his development a wee bit.
There's the ultimate compliment, isn't it? Ultimate compliment. If someone's coming after your job, it keeps you on your toes. But joking aside, that's what you need for succession planning and growing
Absolutely,
like yours. So
absolutely.
absolutely delightful. Tony,
I mentioned another example, Shan.
yeah,
Let me just give you. And this is of someone who had actually she'd graduated from Edinburgh University with a master's actually in Cambridge, and had headed down south to Haribo to do a graduate training program from Scotland. Had touched in the industry before, but had decided to kind of go and spread our wings a bit into another industry, and who very quickly realised that actually this isn't the industry that I want to be in. I want to be back in the spirits industry, and in particular for some of the science disciplines. What a fantastic growth area, or, personal growth, personal development area the drinks industry is. I think there's this perception among scientists that the place to be is in the gas and oil industry, or in environment technology and things like that. Whereas on their doorstep, there's just this plethora of opportunity within the drinks and scotch industry that's relatively untapped. So she came back out of Haribo, moved back north, and joined in a project role. But very, very quickly, she's now moved into, as part of her career path, into most probably distillery manager, or somewhere in a more technical type of role like that. She's now the compliance manager for the business. So again, diversifying on her skills so that she's getting a well-rounded view of what's required to run a distillery. And I would imagine, in a few years' time, either she'll be knocking on my door saying, "Listen, I've learnt my trade and I'm going to go and work for somebody else now in a distillery," or "Hurry up and give me a job in the distillery, Tony, because I'm ready for it now." So, two really different stories, but great paths that they've been on, and not necessarily exclusive to Loch Lomond Group, but the path that's available within the drinks industry.
so as we're coming to a close here, Tony, it's kind of clear that there's a clear career path. It doesn't matter what level you come in on. We've talked about graduates. We've talked about those entry level type roles as well. I know there's great terms and conditions, everything that goes with a package in the drinks industry that makes it more attractive. And I think in Scotland, you touched on this at the start. It's it's our product. It's our national product, and we should be proud of it. And I
Yep.
think that comes through in just talking to you. You don't need to say it, Tony. You're proud to represent this part of our economy. That's a massive part of what we do here in Scotland, and what we manufacture. Tony, absolute pleasure as always having a good discussion with you. And thank you so much for coming on. Tony Brewerton, Loch Lomond Group. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thanks, Sam. Take care.
Thank you.